snowblowers. Sometimes it's hard to live with them, but it's even harder to move snow without them. In today's episode, we are going to be diagnosing a snowblower with a no-start issue, and we're going to learn a valuable lesson along the way, so look for that. However, before we get started, I'd like to take a minute and ask you guys to share this video if you like it, and if you haven't already, please consider subscribing. Without wasting any more time, let's dive right in. Okay, so let's see what we got. Let's do our regular checks. And of course, I forgot my rag. Should always have a rag, because it's important to check your oil before you fire up any of these small engines, because they burn oil. It's just inherent to the design. So, let's see what we got. Well, we've got oil in there. Not quite sure what type of oil it is, and it must have been done just recently. It's super clean. So that's a good sign. Missing a cover here. Not quite sure where that went, but it's not there. And I was told that this thing just starts to smoke or spit out the exhaust. I guess we'll find out. Oh, better check to make sure we got gas. And, well, there's not much in there. We'll do a couple of pulls, see if it's even tries, and then we'll go from there. But let's make sure that's fast, okay? Primer. Let's give her 5 shots and see what happens here. Yeah, I got a feeling, woohoo, that we're out of gas. Let's go get some gas. Wouldn't that be awesome if that was the only problem? Simply because it was out of gas? I mean, that's happened to me before. Should be enough for at least just the testing. Let's try this again. A couple of primes. All right, so clearly we got gas now. Still doesn't want to fire. So let's move on to make sure we got some spark. And since I have it, may as well make use of the lift, since I'm going to be working on, spark and probably a carburetor at this point, but I don't know, we'll find out. My back's going to thank you one day, Mr. Lift. Well, it is kind of easier to work on without this cover in the way. So let's take a look at the spark plug. Ooh, that spark plug is wet. Wow. Super, super wet. So, wow, why is that? It smells like gas too. So, well, let's check for spark anyways. The easiest way to do that is we're just going to clip. It's always nice to get these testers, guys. I think I've mentioned it before, but they're a few bucks. Saves a lot of time. And I could have tested it with the spark plug in place. It's just now you don't have the resistance of the compression. So, am I going to be able to see the spark while it's occurring? Make sure you got a good ground. I'm going to turn this light off to get the maximum brightness out of the spark. Oh yeah, I'll be able to see it from this side. Everything's on still. Okay, let's give her. I don't know if you guys see anything, but I am not seeing anything. Maybe because I'm grounding it out right now. Let's move it over here, maybe. I don't want to touch it because I will get a shock. Oh, okay. I didn't touch it, but I still got a shock. Ah, ow. What is going on? It must be grounding out or something. That hurt. Okay, but I'm not seeing it coming from here. How am I? Maybe I need to look at it in a different light where it's darker. Yeah, so there's something going on. It's grounding out because I felt it. That wasn't cool. All right, so after giving it a quick once over here, I don't see anything out of the ordinary. I mean, all the connections here are okay. They're in place, and then you have right over here on your linkage, you have the, when you move it to the off position, everything seems okay there. The ground is still in place. Oh, sorry about that. The ground is still in place, and none of the wires seem frayed or, you know, arcing against a ground or the frame or something like that. So I'm going to have to go ahead and dismantle some of this so I can have access to the wire harness going right into the stator to see if there's a problem in between there. The cool thing is, though, I'm going to show you this in a second. It helps kind of diagnose whether or not you have a bad magneto or flywheel weights, not weights, sorry, magnets. Is when I use the electric starter, the light actually starts to illuminate. So that tells me that it's still, at least the charge coil or the charging coil is still making power. So that's a good sign. It's probably just a bad wire somewhere. It's just a matter of tracing it now. I don't really want to disrupt any of this stuff, to be quite honest with you, but I need to have access. I need to see what the wires are doing. Okay, so we have a wire harness right here, and this one is plugged in. I checked that earlier. Everything seems to work. We're going to pull this on the bench. I'm going to show you quickly that you can test this switch over here to make sure that it's actually doing its job. Oh, and what do we have here? We got some blue silicone on a gasket. So that tells me someone's been in here. This one's on the outside. I'm not too concerned about that one, but I'm going to dive in a little bit deeper and find out what's going on the intake side here. Okay, so this gasket's in good shape. Ah, and of course, I need to take apart the fuel line, and of course, I just put a whole bunch of fuel in there. So let me go get my locking pliers. So we're just going to pinch it off like this. Not too heavily so we damage the line, but enough that it's not going to leak. Does not always seem to be the case too, where you start on a project like that. It's either you need to take the fuel tank out of the car, and that's because, let's say, the fuel pump let go and it's full of fuel or full of gas, or you need to test something and you got no gas. It's just one or the other. At least that's what seems to be the case for me. Ah, sweet. Didn't make much of a mess. This carburetor looks pretty darn new. Might have been replaced, which is probably why that gasket was torn. Okay, so what do we have here? I'm gonna harness going back. Oh, please don't tell me I gotta take all this apart. Oh, is that loose? Okay, no, that's our ground. That seems to be connected. Yeah, that's well done. Okay. Yeah, looks like I gotta take the fuel tank off so I can see more. And then probably the back here. Oh, it just gets better and better. Okay, so let's take a quick second and test this switch over here. And always test your meter, make sure it works. And it does. So with the key all the way pushed in, this should not have continuity, should not beep. If it does, you have a bad switch. We don't have a beep here. Now if we remove the key, it should beep. And it does. So we have a good switch, and the reason for that is because if you remove the key, it will allow the circuit to complete itself, which will now ground any of the spark right back to the ground. So it's not actually going to make its way to the spark plug, and that's why they call it either a safety key or even just an emergency stop. So we know this one's good. Okay, hopefully I'll be able to gain more access to what's going on if I remove the recoil here. That one's really tight. That one as well. or my battery's just really low. Let's see if we can just crack them loose here. Oh yeah, they're tight. Oh, that one's really tight. Okay, well that's always fun. So I can't get to the last bolt to remove the cover without removing the gas tank, or at least not easily. I guess we're pulling the tank. Hope you guys grabbed yourself a cold drink or something, because it looks like this video might be longer than I thought. This was supposed to be super easy. Oh yeah, you know, like we're just gonna fire it up, probably a carb cleaning, you know, something along those lines. Maybe a bad spark plug, an adjustment. No, Rick always gets into these big projects after you think they're, you know, quick and easy. Maybe I do it to myself, maybe I hype myself, but well, we will rectify it. Okay. So 35 minutes later, you can remove the fuel tank. And now we can gain access to this one bolt over here that is, super tight. And that should give us that. Nope, it does not. I gotta remove this cover now, which is an 8mm rather than a 10. Now can I finally pull the screws? 1, 3, and finally 4. So there is a ground on this one, guys, and that is for the accessory circuit, which is your light. More than likely going to have to pull the flywheel at this point as well to make sure that we got some, oh, maybe not. There's the coil right there. If you haven't noticed, I actually haven't opened one of these up too far. So I'm not 100% up to date with these, but I'm willing to say at this point that this is a bad coil. Because everything looks okay for wiring. So if there was a broken wire going to the coil, say like this one here going into it, we would have an issue. And this is the one that's going back to the ground here. I mean, even so, guys, I don't know how much life is left out of these engines, or out of this particular engine, and I'll tell you why, because I'm turning this, and have a listen. I'm just rotating it back and forth. So right there, the piston isn't moving, and now the piston's moving. So that there is all slop. Where? Well, it's either the connecting rod at the bottom end or at the top end. So it's not good. Okay, so there's the piston right there. You can kind of see it moving. And I am at top dead center, granted. However, look at the flywheel now in relation to the piston and how much movement that is. I understand that the piston is stopping and turning around, going back down, but that is an awful lot of movement. Not to mention you can hear that clicking in there. Something's loose. So there is definitely some play. So alright guys, I think I might have just figured it out. And this came to me as I was testing the coil off camera. I was looking up the specs, and you need to test for the high tension lead. And oh look, I have removed the spark plug cap. And these spark plug caps, I remember now, have 5k ohms, so 5,000 ohms. So I decided, you know, sometimes I've seen it where right in here where they thread in, the wires get corroded or something like that. And guess what? Let's check this out. I'm going to see if I can do this without hurting myself, or, you know what, I'm going to have to put the camera on a stand. Give me a sec. I'm going to hit the button, and keep the spark plug lead away from the exhaust here, just far enough so I can arc and check out the spark. Now that is a beautiful spark. So you know what that means? I took all of this apart when I really didn't have to. Shocker. So let this be a lesson to you guys out there. Start with the simple stuff. I don't know what was going on in my head today. I mean, I obviously just found an issue and I just ran for it, thinking it was the coil, but I completely forgot to check the parts that are easier. So the easiest thing to do would have been, one, check the spark plug. I did that by removing the spark plug and putting it in my tester. I still wasn't getting spark. The next thing down the line should have been the cap. I don't know why I didn't do it. These caps actually don't fail very often, but clearly this one has. If you test it, it's not within the ohms range. So I could have saved myself, well, it's not a whole bunch of time, but I could have saved myself some time no matter what. So we're going to purchase a cap and put it back on, and hopefully this thing will fire up and run just fine.
Connected.
Alright guys, so it's the next day and I went shopping for one of these resistor caps. This one happens to be a 5K ohm, 5K meaning 5,000, and guess what? It's not available, or at least not separately available for this particular engine. You need to buy the whole coil with the wire, the high tension lead, and this little bit of pigtail that comes with it. And I call it a coil because that's essentially what it is, but they call it a module, and because it's a module, it comes as a whole assembly, which of course is more expensive. So I sourced out, instead of using one of those resistor caps, I'm using just a plain old, I believe this would fit many other engines. I mean, it looks familiar to me. I think it's a Honda. I will have the, maybe a link on Amazon. I didn't get it from Amazon, however, but I will find it on Amazon. I'll have it linked down below in case you guys have the same issue. But this doesn't have a resistor. But the spark plug does. So this is an NGK spark plug. The R in NGK, if you're looking at the numbering system, stands for resistor. And the reason you have a resistor in the ignition system is to suppress electrical noise. You don't want to have, let's say back in a few years ago, well many years ago, if you had like a TV with rabbit ears and you were running a snowblower nearby, it might affect the signal on your TV, or even it might even affect your radio signal. But everything is better, it's better updated, we have more technology now, not as much of an issue, and it won't affect the engine. It won't affect the runnability at all. So I'm going to throw this in and reassemble all of this mess, then we'll go back to seeing how it runs. Quick little tip that I have for you guys is when you're about ready to put on the other, like the new one, this is the new one, they just screw in. As you'll see down this hole, there's a little screw, and you'll just literally screw that on to the high tension lead here. But there's a little tiny hole in there from the old one. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just kind of cut the tip off of that, and then that'll just, you know, promote better connectivity, I don't know, conductivity. Anyways, you know what I'm trying to say, between the two halves. So I'm going to do that, and then we'll start reassembling. Okay, so she's all back together. Again, minus this cover, but I mean, who cares? It doesn't really need to be there. However, I want to know if it's actually going to fix the problem. So we're just going to go real quick through the start procedure. It is warm in here, warmer than outside, so we're not going to worry too much about the choke. We're going to leave it at run, but we are going to give it a couple of primes. We know we have gas because we topped that off first thing. We checked for oil, we know we have oil. And all we need to do now is cross our fingers and hope that when we pull this, it's going to start and run. And not make a whole pile of smoke, because I got a feeling it might smoke since it was probably flooded. But anyways, let's give it a shot. Oh, and you got to make sure you put your throttle to the run position. That would have been silly. 15 pulls later, it doesn't start. It might start. Not sure. We'll find out. Oh yeah, not bad at all. I am shocked. I thought for sure I was going to see a lot more smoke coming out of there. Oh, there it is. There's the smoke. There's the smoke. I knew eventually it was going to make its way out. That's crazy. Don't want to smoke out my garage here. But it runs pretty good. So let's take it down and maybe we'll run it outside. See how it throws snow, because I don't know, maybe the belts need to be adjusted too.
Oh, this is looking good. Oh, yeah. Look at that. This is my little test area. It seems to be working pretty darn good. Oh. Slow, little guy, slow. It's so much better than using a shovel. More reverse working. That's awesome.
Well, that's just about going to do it for today's video, guys. Thank you so much for watching. And I mean, as you saw there, it's working fantastic. And it turns out it wasn't as bad of a repair as I thought it was. I mean, it could have been worse. Could have been a coil, which would have been more expensive. And I honestly don't think that little rod knock or clanking that I heard inside is affecting anything. This engine is super smooth. It runs really well, throws a lot of snow. So I think it's going to be in good shape for at least another season. So again, thank you for watching. And I really hope you guys get out there, grab your wrenches, and go fix something.